This is a sexually extraterritorial place that you can safely show your banana to women.
Japan's adult entertainment industry rakes in over $24 billion annually. Its success is a testament to the fact that sex sells.
160 minutes one shot, 90 and 120 minutes and a minute shot.
However, the red light districts and bizarre adult entertainment mediums didn't pop up out of nowhere. Their history is hidden in plain sight.
The Japanese prostitutes were called yujo. You have to pay $750 every 60 seconds being with her.
From centuries-old pleasure districts to modern-day soaplands, the industry has thrived in the underbelly of Japanese culture. Beneath the neon lights of Kabukicho, an entire underworld exists, shaped by tradition, war, and even the Yakuza. How did it all evolve, and what secrets are waiting to be revealed? Let's find out. Roots of the red light districts. The roots of Japan's adult industry go back to the early 1600s, during the Tokugawa shogunate. At this time, the country had just come out of a period of war and unrest. To bring order and stability, the government introduced various policies, including legalizing prostitution. This was a big step. It brought sex work under official control. It kept it in specific regulated areas called licensed quarters. Most of the women involved in this trade came from poor families. Often they were sold into the profession by their parents in exchange for money that was essential for the family's survival. In this period, there was little to no social stigma attached to this practice. In fact, society accepted it as a way for girls to fulfill their filial duty, which lessened the shame for families and individuals involved. The licensed quarters weren't just places for sexual activities. They became central parts of Japan's urban economy, attracting men from all social classes. Samurai, merchants, and commoners all frequented these quarters. The industry's growth matched the booming economy. Cash replaced barter, making it more accessible to a larger group. This early system was not just about controlling prostitution. It was also about maintaining social order. These areas helped manage volatile elements, like disgruntled fighters and unemployed men. They were kept occupied. It was a pragmatic solution that the government believed could prevent crimes and maintain public morality. This government-backed system set the tone for Japan's adult entertainment. Its roots are deep ingrained in the early days of the shogunate. As we move forward, we'll see how these foundations influence the development of Japan's red light districts and the changing dynamics of the industry over time. Yukaku. While the government legalized the adult entertainment industry, it kept a close look and an even tighter hold on its activities. Yukaku were Japan's sanctioned red light districts from the years of the shogunate rule, also called the Edo period. These areas were established to regulate and contain the adult entertainment industry in Japan. The government created these zones to control prostitution. They wanted to keep it separate from society. In these districts, strict rules applied to both workers and customers. Everything was closely monitored by officials. The goal was to contain these immoral activities within those areas. This would supposedly maintain public order. Yukaku districts were often walled off, separating them from the city. This kept social order. It also allowed the government tax the businesses there. Within the walls of a yukaku, life had its own rhythm, much different from the world outside. It wasn't just about prostitution. It also became a place for various forms of entertainment. Yukaku districts were vibrant social hubs. Patrons could enjoy theater, music, and fine dining. Many courtesans in Yukaku were skilled in calligraphy and poetry. So, these districts were more than just places for physical pleasure. As Japan began to grow and cities expanded, the Yukaku also shifted. They moved to new locations to accommodate urban planning and development. The authorities wanted to stop these districts from hindering the growing modern cities. For example, in colonial Taiwan, Yukaku districts were part of city planning. This showed their importance in the urban landscape. Despite being separated from the general public, the influence of Yukaku was undeniable. It shaped the culture and social dynamics of Japan's cities. It began a long relationship between the government and the adult entertainment industry. Yoshiwara. But how did these districts lead to the rise of Yoshiwara? The most famous of them all, Yoshiwara was established in 1617 and quickly became the most well-known red light district in Japan. Yoshiwara was located in Edo, now Tokyo. It was a controlled area where licensed prostitution was allowed. Its original purpose was to centralize the adult entertainment industry and separate it from the rest of society. This district was walled off. It created a unique world where patrons could escape the rigid social rules that governed their lives. Inside Yoshiwara, social status mattered less. As long as a man had money, he was treated with the same respect as anyone else, regardless of his rank outside the district. This escape from reality made Yoshiwara very popular. It drew all classes, especially wealthy merchants and samurai, who sought refuge from their strict lives. For the women working in Yoshiwara, life was much harsher. Many were sold into the trade at a young age, often as early as 12 or 13 years old. They were bound by contracts that made it nearly impossible to leave unless a patron paid off their debts. The conditions were tough, with many women suffering from diseases, physical abuse, and a lack of proper care. Yet, they were expected to maintain a perfect appearance and cater to the fantasies of their clients. Yoshiwara wasn't just a place for physical pleasure. It also became a center for culture, where art, poetry, and music flourished. Many courtesans were trained in these arts. So, they were not just providers of physical services, but also entertainers. This glamorous image of Yoshiwara, shown in paintings and prints, hid the harsh reality many women endured. With the establishment of Yoshiwara, the image of the pleasure girl became more refined, leading to the next era, the Meiji period. But first, more on the truth of pleasure girls' life. Life and death of a pleasure girl. The lives of pleasure girls in Yoshiwara were not glamorous. Art often depicts a false image of them. Many of these girls were sold into the brothel system at a young age, often as children, because their families were poor. For most, this was not a choice, but a necessity forced upon them by poverty. Once sold, the young girls became attendants. They ran errands and did chores for the senior courtesans. During this time, they learned the skills required for their future work, such as how to act, speak, and even manipulate their clients' emotions. If they showed potential, they would be groomed to become high-ranking courtesans. This training included the job's physical aspects. It also taught traditional Japanese arts like calligraphy, music, and dance to appeal to elite clients. Despite the skills they acquired, their lives were extremely difficult. These women faced harsh working conditions and long hours and were often expected to entertain multiple clients in one day. Their debt only grew as they had to pay for their luxurious kimonos, cosmetics, and attendance, ensuring they remained tied to the brothel. Disease was also rampant. Venereal diseases, in particular, spread quickly in these tightly packed brothels. Many courtesans would die young, often in their early 20s, with no family to claim their bodies. This bleak reality was a far cry from the romanticized images of beautiful women in colorful kimonos portrayed in artwork. The Meiji era, 1868-1912. Next, we'll explore how the Meiji era brought significant changes to this world. The Meiji era was a time of major reform in Japan, and with that came significant changes in the adult entertainment industry. As the country modernized, it opened to Western influences. The new government legalized prostitution, which had been illegal during the Tokugawa period. This shift meant that young women, especially those from poor rural areas, could now be legally bought and sold into prostitution. For many families in extreme poverty, famine, or crop failure, selling daughters to brothels was a tragic but necessary way to survive. These young girls often had no idea what they were getting into. They were sold under the assumption they would be working as servants or entertainers. Sadly, the reality was much harsher. Once in the brothels, the girls were often treated as property, with little control over their own lives. In cities like Tokyo, urban growth created a need for more brothels. They catered to the growing male population, especially in industrial areas. There, men outnumbered women. Brothels weren't just present in Japan, though. As Japan expanded its influence into Korea, China, and other parts of Asia, many Japanese prostitutes were sent abroad. These women were brought to foreign brothels, often not knowing where they were going or what their lives would become. Abortion and infanticide were illegal during this time, leading to many unwanted pregnancies and often deaths of the girls too. The Meiji government modernized some parts of society, but it did little to protect women. This left them vulnerable to exploitation. Next, we'll explore how the rise of the geisha impacted the broader landscape of Japan's entertainment world. Rise of the geisha. Amongst brutal objectification and exploitation of the brothel girls, the changing socio-political landscape introduced the world to a new version of courtesanship that seemed like a step forward in those dark days. In the late Edo period, Japan's pleasure districts thrived, but there was a shift in entertainment. This shift led to the rise of the geisha. People often mistake them for adult entertainers. In fact, they were entertainers, trained in various traditional arts. Unlike the courtesans of Yoshiwara, geishas were not romantic with their patrons. Their role was to entertain through music, dance, and conversation. This split from the adult services in red light districts helped elevate their status in society. Becoming a geisha was no easy task. It required years of training and discipline. Young girls, often starting their training as early as 6 years old, would begin as maiko, or apprentice geishas. During their apprenticeship, they learned various traditional arts, including the shamisen, a 3-stringed instrument, tea ceremonies, and classical Japanese dance. They also mastered graceful conversation. It lets them entertain their patrons. Unlike many women in the adult entertainment world, geishas held a respectable place in society. They often performed for influential figures, including wealthy businessmen and political leaders. This distinction allowed geishas to maintain a certain air of mystery and cultural prestige. Over time, they became symbols of Japanese refinement. They attracted the admiration of both locals and foreigners. As Japan modernized in the Meiji era, geishas flourished. They kept their cultural importance while the government cracked down on other entertainment. The rise of the geisha marked a time when traditional arts and performance were tied to Japan's changing social structure. This set the stage for the entertainment world to adapt to modern changes. Akasen, Ausen, Red Line, Blue Line districts. As Japan modernized, new regulations hit the pleasure districts. The terms Akasen, Red Line, and Ausen, Blue Line, became common. Akasen referred to licensed, government-approved districts where prostitution was legal and regulated. On the other hand, Außen referred to unlicensed areas that operated outside the law. Despite the legal differences, both areas catered to the same demand. They offered a space for adult entertainment. The lines between Akasin and Außen were often blurred. Many Außen districts operated in a legal gray area. The government created Akasen districts to control and tax the adult industry. They wanted to keep the activities hidden from the public and maintain order. In these areas, businesses operated under strict rules. Prostitutes working in Akasin districts were registered and monitored by authorities, and establishments paid taxes. The system gave the government control over the industry. But it didn't improve the lives of the women involved. Conditions were tough for the women working there. Many faced harsh living standards and had little chance to escape. Außen districts, on the other hand, were more underground. They lacked the same legal protections, but authorities often tolerated them. These blue line districts became popular after World War II. Many women left without options turned to this work for survival. Außen districts were illegal but thrived in Japanese cities. They offered more freedom but also more danger for the women involved. This dual system of red and blue line districts reflects Japan's complex relationship with the adult industry. It is caught between regulation and a strong demand for these services. This period set the stage for the further evolution of Japan's adult entertainment industry. Post-war era. After World War II, Japan faced significant challenges, not only economically, but socially as well. The country was under American occupation, and this period saw major shifts in various industries, including the adult entertainment sector. During this time, many women, desperate for income in a war-torn country, turned to prostitution. This led to the rise of pan girls, women who catered to American soldiers stationed in Japan. The post-war period was chaotic, with poverty and hunger rampant, pushing many into the sex trade as a means of survival. The Japanese government saw the growing demand from foreign soldiers and created special zones, often referred to as recreation and amusement areas, to control the situation. These zones were meant to prevent interactions between soldiers and ordinary Japanese women. However, these areas became hotbeds for exploitation, with many women working under poor conditions. This system didn't last long, as the American forces soon banned the practice due to concerns about sexually transmitted diseases. During this era, prostitution remained in a legal gray area, often tolerated but not officially sanctioned. Many brothels operated under the guise of bathhouses or restaurants, as strict laws against prostitution hadn't been fully enforced yet. This time period laid the groundwork for the rise of modern-day adult entertainment establishments such as Soaplands, which emerged later to cater to the evolving demands of this hidden industry. The post-war era was not just about survival for these women, it also exposed the deep inequalities in Japanese society. Women were forced into these roles, with little protection or recognition from the law. This era marked a critical shift, as Japan's adult industry began to transform, leading to more organized forms of adult entertainment like Soaplands and red light districts like Kabukicho. The era of Soaplands. Soaplands are an important part of Japan's adult entertainment industry, known for operating in a legal gray area. These establishments started as bathhouses, but gradually evolved into what many consider a discrete form of prostitution. Customers pay for a bath with a soap girl, but the reality is often far more complex. After Japan passed the anti-prostitution law in 1958, traditional brothels were forced to close. However, Soaplands found a loophole. They offer bathing services, but what happens beyond that is considered a private agreement between the worker and the client. Legally, these establishments do not offer intercourse, but it's widely known that many services extend beyond just a bath. The workers in these soaplands, known as sopujo, soap girls, are highly trained in what's called erotic bathing. It's a skillful process where the worker uses soap and lotion to create an intimate experience for the client. The idea is to blend relaxation with pleasure, and the more expensive the establishment, the more elaborate the service becomes. Some high-end soaplands require workers to undergo training in specialized techniques like mat play, which involves the customer lying on a mat while being bathed and massaged. Soaplands are typically located in districts like Yoshiwara, where customers can expect to pay a hefty price for these services. The base fee for a session can range from 30,000 yen, around $280, for a basic bath, with additional services costing much more. Customers, often wealthy businessmen, see these visits as a form of stress relief after long work days. Despite their illegal undertones, soaplands continue to thrive due to their discreet nature and the fact that the transactions are classified as romantic relationships, allowing them to operate without directly violating the law. Kabukicho. Kabukicho, located in Shinjuku, is one of Japan's most infamous nightlife districts. It stands out not only for its bright neon lights and countless entertainment venues, but also for its ties to the adult entertainment industry. Originally, Kabukicho wasn't meant to become what it is today. After World War II, it was part of a plan to rebuild Tokyo into a cultural hub. The area was named after a kabuki theater that was supposed to be built but never was due to financial struggles. Instead, over time, Kabukicho transformed into the heart of Japan's red light district, filled with bars, nightclubs, and adult entertainment establishments. Despite its small size, just about 600 square meters, Kabukicho is packed with more than 1,000 restaurants, hotels, and venues, making it one of the densest entertainment areas in Tokyo. Today, it's not just a place for nightlife, but also a hotspot for tourists curious about its reputation. One of the main attractions of Kabukicho is the variety of businesses that cater to the adult industry, including hostess bars and soaplands. While many of these venues operate legally, some activities fall into gray areas of the law. The area is also known for being under the control of the Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicate. The Yakuza have long maintained order in Kabukicho, often settling disputes between customers and businesses. However, their involvement has also contributed to the district's darker reputation. Kabukicho remains a major draw for both locals and tourists. Despite efforts by the government to clean up its image, it continues to be one of Tokyo's most complex districts, balancing legality, entertainment, and the underground economy. The Yakuza's role. Next, we look at the influence of the Yakuza on Japan's adult industry. The Yakuza, Japan's organized crime syndicate, has long been a powerful force in the country's adult entertainment industry. Despite government efforts to curb their influence, they continue to play a central role in running establishments like soaplands, massage parlors, and other adult venues. The Yakuza manage these businesses by taking advantage of legal loopholes, allowing them to offer services without directly breaking anti-prostitution laws. For decades, the Yakuza's reach extended into Kabukicho, Japan's most infamous red light district. In this area, they maintained a tight grip on the adult industry, profiting from extortion, protection rackets, and human trafficking. Their operations often crossed paths with the black market, making them a formidable power in Japan's underground economy. However, over the last few decades, the Japanese government has introduced stricter laws aimed at limiting the Yakuza's influence. These laws, such as the Organized Crime Exclusion Ordinance, prohibit any business or individual from having dealings with the Yakuza. But even with these crackdowns, the Yakuza have adapted, going underground and using more discreet methods to operate. They've shifted to more covert forms of income generation, including construction, finance, and disaster recovery projects. Their subtle presence in these industries allows them to continue making significant profits while avoiding direct confrontation with the law. Despite being less visible in recent years, the Yakuza's control over certain parts of Japan's adult entertainment industry remains intact. They continue to exploit vulnerable individuals, especially in areas like Kabukicho, where their presence, though diminished, is still felt in the shadows. This deep-rooted connection between organized crime and the adult industry remains a challenging issue for law enforcement to fully dismantle. We hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more.